Today I'm going to show you how to take your leftover fabric scraps and make quilted projects to dress up your home. So I'm going to go over how to create quilted placemats, coasters, and pot holders, which also make awesome gifts. This is part of our scrap busting series where we show you how to take your leftover fabric scraps and use them to make projects that are both beautiful and useful. So be sure to subscribe so you see all the videos in our scrap busting series. If you want to learn how to piece your fabric and make patchwork projects, be sure to check out the first video in this series. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to quilt these pieces and then finish them with bias tape. We're going to start with a placemat, but then I'll give you the dimensions if you want to make coasters or pot holders, which are basically the same concept. Here are the materials you're going to need. First of all, fabric. You'll need about 1/4 yard for each placemat that you're going to make. If you want to create patchwork fabric like we did, check out the first video in this series and we'll link that below. Next, you'll need double fold bias tape in your preferred size. We're using 2.5 inch total bias tape that we're going to fold to make double fold bias tape. Next, you'll need batting. 1/4 yard of batting will be able to get you 2 placemats. For the batting we're using today, we're using an insulated thermal lining, which is actually great for making pot holders or placemats because it protects surfaces from heat. You'll need thread, and then you'll need either spray-based, curved basting pins, or safety pins. You'll also want a marking tool and a clear ruler. So first, cut your first rectangle, and this is going to be the top of your placemat. So we're using a standard placemat size, which is 12 by 18 inches or 30 by 45 centimeters. Next, cut your second rectangle, which is going to be the bottom of your placemat. And this one is going to be a little bit bigger, so we want to cut it about 1 inch bigger on each dimension. So 1 inch bigger in width and 1 inch bigger in length. So it'll be 1/2 inch wider on each side. Next, cut your batting. And the batting is going to be the same size as that second rectangle. So it's going to overhang that first rectangle by 1/2 inch on each side. Next, cut a length of bias tape and make it big enough that it can go all the way around the perimeter, and then add about 6 inches extra just to have a little bit of buffer. Next, we're going to make our quilt sandwich. So we'll start with the backing fabric. So this is going to be the very bottom of the placemat. And if your fabric has a right side and a wrong side, place the right side facing down. Next, take your batting and place that right on top of that backing fabric. Get everything aligned. And then finally, place your top fabric right on top of the batting, leaving about 1/2 inch on each side. Make sure the right side is facing up. Now you want to fix it all in place. So there's a few ways you can do this. You can use safety pins and go through all layers. You can use curved basting pins, or you can use spray-based, and that's what we're going to do. You can just follow the instructions in your own can of spray-based to baste your pieces together. Now that you've made your quilt sandwich, it's time to mark the quilting lines that you want on your finished project. So you can either freestyle it, or you can mark your lines, just use a ruler and you can draw any pattern that you want. We're just going to do some very simple diagonal lines on this. All right, now I've drawn all my lines in and it's time to quilt. So first, set your machine to a longer stitch length. So 3 to 3.5 millimeters is a good place to start. I'm going to set mine to 3.5. Now, if you have a walking foot, you can use that. I don't have one on me today, so I'm just going to use a regular foot. All you have to do is stitch along those lines that you just drew. So it's easiest to start in the middle and then work out from there. All right, so once you have it all quilted like this, it's time to trim off that excess batting and backing fabric. All right, so I am just cutting off the edges and making sure that my corners are squared. So the reason that you cut your batting and your backing fabric a little bit bigger than your top quilting fabric is that fabric can tend to shift as you're quilting. So cutting it a little bigger allows that shift to happen, and then you can just re-square it when you cut off those edges. All right, so we've got our quilted placemat all squared. So the next step is to sew binding all around the edges, and we're gonna do a nice mitered corner. So here's an example of what it's gonna look like when it's done. So the binding is gonna cover up that raw edge, and then the mitered corner is going to give it that really neat little corner. And if you can learn to do this, you'll be able to make any quilted piece, including a full-size quilt. So to start, be sure to set your stitch length back to a normal stitch length, so that's about 2.5. So take your bias tape, unfold it, and start pinning it along one edge close to the middle, and be sure to leave a little tail. Okay, so what we're going to do is stitch from that pin towards that next edge, but we're not going to stitch all the way to the edge, so we want to stop a little bit short of that first edge. So how short do we want to stop? Well, what you need to do is just measure the width of that first fold of your bias tape. So we're using bias tape that's going to have a 1/2 inch finished width, so this first fold is a 1/2 inch. That means we're going to sew until we get to a 1/2 inch from that first edge, and then we're going to stop. So let's start with that. So I'm just going to mark a 1/2 inch from the edge. Next, you're going to fold the bias tape on a diagonal so that it points right to that corner. So you want to fold it at 45 degrees, and it should point right to that corner like this. And once you have that, just finger press it in place. And you know you have it at 45 degrees when this edge is perpendicular to your other edge here. Once you've got that in place, fold the bias tape back towards the next side, like this. And again, just finger press it in place. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start stitching again a 1/2 inch from the edge. We're going to continue stitching until we get a 1/2 inch from the next edge. And remember, I'm using a 1/2 inch because that's the width of my bias tape. But if your bias tape is wider or narrower, you just want to make sure that that measurement is the same width as this first fold. Okay, so once again, we've stopped about a 1/2 inch from the edge. So once again, we're going to fold it diagonally. So it points to the corner like this. And then fold it back. Once again, we'll start stitching 1/2 inch from the edge and keep going till we get to the next corner. All right, now we're going to sew this last corner, and once we're done with that, we're going to keep going, and we're going to stop about 2 inches from our starting point. Okay, so we've got our bias tape sewn all the way around, and I'm just going to trim this so we still have a few inches of tail on each side. So now we're going to sew these 2 tails of bias tape together. So just lay them down so that they meet along the edge, and then either mark with your marking pencil, or you can finger press in place exactly where they meet. So we'll put a mark here on this side, and we'll put a mark here on this side. Then lift them up, and we're going to sew these 2 tails together right at that mark. So you can use a pin or just pin right at the mark. Make sure that they match up. And now we're going to sew these 2 tails together. Now trim off any excess seam allowance, and you're going to press this seam open. Now stitch across the gap. All right, now we're going to turn our bias tape over to the other side, and you'll see that you get this nice, clean, mitered corner. So fold out your mitered corners like this, and then press them. Now flip to the other side, fold in your bias tape like this, fold it to one side, and then fold it in. So you're forming a miter on the second side as well, just like this. And once you have that in place, give it a press. So now that I've got it pressed, I'm going to hold this in place with a Wonder Clip. So this is a kind of a bonus tip. You can use the Wonder Clip to hold your bias edge in place and just ensure that you're hitting the same spot on the back side as you are on the front side. So you can see the front of the Wonder Clip is right on the edge of the bias tape on this side, and it's right on the edge of the bias tape on this side. So continue around and keep forming those corners. All right, so we've got our binding clipped on, and the last thing we need to do really is just edge stitch along this edge. And when you edge stitch that, it's going to catch the underside and seal all your edges within the bias tape. So now you can just give it a final press and we're completely done. You've got a beautiful placemat here, and you can use this to make all kinds of things. So you can use this to make placemats, you can use it to make potholders, you can use it to make coasters. So if you want to make a potholder, you can make a standard size potholder at 7 by 9 inches, which is 18 by 23 centimeters, or you can make it a square, just kind of around that range. If you want to make a coaster in this way, the standard coaster size is 4 by 4 inches or 10 by 10 centimeters. I love making easy projects like this from the scraps that are left over from sewing my own clothing. And if you're into sewing your own wardrobe, you might want to check out Seamwork. When you join, you get access to our entire catalog of over 200 modern sewing patterns, from quick and easy tops to wear anywhere dresses to tailored blazers and pants. We help you to design and craft your own wardrobe. Membership also gets you access to Design Your Wardrobe, our popular course that walks you through a process for laying out a seasonal wardrobe that you can sew. Plus, membership includes our library of dozens of sew-along classes, and best of all, access to our private sewing community, including tens of thousands of members, where you can post projects, ask questions, and even find sewing friends near you. I hang out there all the time along with Haley and the rest of the team here at Seamwork, and I'd love for you to join me. YouTube subscribers get half off a Seamwork membership, making it an incredibly good deal. To sign up, just click the button on screen or the link in the description below to claim your offer. I hope you loved this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.